Hi, welcome again to another edition of What Happened Last Week, January 11th through January 17th. I'm Jim Hinton, the Lunch Pail Theologian. The Department of Justice is investigating Fed Chair Jerome Powell over his testimony regarding renovations at the Federal Reserve Building, with Powell stating he received grand jury subpoenas and alleges the probe is retaliation for the Fed's independent monetary policy, specifically setting interest rates independent of President Donald Trump's wishes. The investigation focuses on whether Powell misled Congress about details, such as luxury amenities included in the renovation plans, leading to significant backlash and concerns about Fed independence. The U.S. is not currently sending troops into Iran for an invasion. However, Donald Trump continues to weigh options related to Iran, and experts consider a large scale ground deployment unlikely due to cost and complexity, though military assets are being moved to the region amid heightened tensions and threats of strikes, with discussions ongoing about potential U.S. action in response to Iranian activities. U.S. officials have stated there's no interest in putting troops on the ground, focusing instead on military options like strikes, while Congress debates authorizing potential conflict. Minnesota and its twin cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, have launched legal action against the United States President Donald Trump administration to stop a hardline immigration enforcement crackdown. The suit attempts to block a surge of federal immigration agents into the state. The lawsuit argues that the deployment amounts to an unconstitutional federal invasion. Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison said immigration operations had upended life for millions and caused chaos and violence. Archbishop Paul S. Coakley of Oklahoma City, head of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, had a private meeting with President Donald Trump at the White House on Monday to discuss areas of mutual concern and further dialogue, according to OSV News and the Oklahoman. The meeting, which also included Vice President J.D. Vance, a Catholic himself, and other officials, was closed to the press but aimed to foster ongoing conversations on topics like immigration, the USCCB noted. Minnesota leaders, including Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison, have acknowledged fraud in state programs, particularly the massive pandemic-era child care fraud, with Walz stating fraud is unacceptable, though Republicans criticize their response as too slow, while federal investigations have led to convictions and calls for systemic reform from various leaders. House Republicans, led by Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, are initiating contempt of Congress proceedings against Bill and Hillary Clinton for failing to appear for bipartisan subpoenas in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. With plans to hold a committee markup on the resolutions soon, though the Clintons argue the subpoenas are legally unenforceable and politically motivated. Keep in mind, Steve Bannon did go to prison for contempt of Congress, serving a 4-month sentence in 2024 after defying subpoenas from the January 6th committee for testimony and documents following a conviction in 2022 that was upheld through appeals. We'll see how things work out for Hillary. Flight logs and reports based on flight logs from Epstein's planes indicate that Clinton was on board for at least 17 to 27 flights, or legs as they're called, between 2002 and 2003. These flights were mostly during international trips related to the Clinton Foundation. White House visits. Records show that Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House 17 times between 1993 and 1995 while Clinton was in office. As protests continue in Iran, President Trump announced on his Truth Social platform that the U.S. would impose a 25% tariff on all business conducted by any country with Iran, calling the order final and conclusive, though the White House offered no official details, impacting major partners like China, Iraq, and India amidst ongoing tensions and protests in Iran. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert comic strip, died on January 13, 2026, at the age of 68 following a battle with metastatic prostate cancer. His death was announced by his former wife, Shelley Miles, during a live stream on his Real Coffee with Scott Adams YouTube channel. Shortly before his death, made public statements read by his ex-wife after he passed that he accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. Mike Tomlin resigned as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers on January 13th, stepping down after 19 seasons, ending a legendary tenure marked by no losing seasons and a Super Bowl Super Bowl 43 win, but also a recent 9-year playoff win drought. It's been 10 years since the Steelers have gotten past the first round of the playoffs. At Denmark's request, several European NATO countries, including France, Germany, the UK, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and the Netherlands, have sent small military contingents to Greenland for joint exercises called Operation Arctic Endurance, to show solidarity amid U.S. tensions over the territory, sending a strong signal against potential U.S. pressure and emphasizing NATO's unified presence in the Arctic. Not deterred, President Donald Trump said Saturday that he would impose a new 10% tariff on Denmark and 7 other European countries until a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland, according to NBC News. The EU expected to retaliate. At least 6 senior federal prosecutors in Minnesota, including acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, resigned last week after the Department of Justice reportedly pushed them to investigate the widow of a woman killed by an Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agent. Of course, we know who that is, Renee Nicole Good and Becca Good is the widow, creating conflict over the handling of the case. The resignation stemmed from the disagreements with the Department of Justice focus on Becca Good rather than the shooter, Jonathan Ross, for a case involving Renee Good's death, prompting several departures on principle, with more expected. Attorney General Pam Bondi disagrees, stating they didn't quit, but rather were fired. Effective January 21st, 2026, there is a freeze on immigrant visa processing for permanent residency for nationals of 75 specific countries due to public charge concerns, but it doesn't generally affect non-immigrant visas, tourist, student, temporary work. The U.S. State Department paused these visas for countries deemed to have higher rates of immigrants using public benefits, impacting applications for green cards and permanent moves. President Donald Trump met with Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel laureate Maria Corina Machado at the White House on Thursday, where she presented him with her Nobel Peace Prize medal as a symbolic gesture of recognition for his efforts regarding Venezuela's freedom. The closed-door meeting involved discussions about the situation in Venezuela, with Machado expressing hopes for a democratic transition, though Trump offered no immediate commitment to endorsing her as the next leader, instead working with Delcy Rodriguez. The U.S. military is introducing the M1E3 Abrams, a new tank, next-generation tank prototype evolving the existing Abrams platform with significant tech upgrades like AI, drone integration, hybrid engine, and digital controls, even a video game-style controller for nimbleness, for a smaller crew and greater battlefield connectivity, aiming to replace older models and modernize its heavy armor fleet. China has an app that recently went viral called Are You Dead? Designed for people living alone to confirm they're alive by checking in daily, which notifies emergency contacts if they miss too many check-ins, reflecting loneliness and the rise of single-person households in China, despite its morbid name, which is a dark humor play on a food delivery app. It became very popular, especially among young people, and has recently been rebranded to Demumu for global markets. Finally, the 2026 NFL Conference Championships are set for Sunday, January 25th, 2026, featuring the AFC Championship with the Denver Broncos hosting the New England Patriots, and the NFC Championship with the Seattle Seahawks hosting the Los Angeles Rams, following the divisional round on winners advancing to Super Bowl LX. 60. And that does it for another episode of What Happened Last Week. My name is Jim Hinton, the Lunch Pail Theologian. Feel free to tune in again, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.